Today we're going to make a washcloth. You can use this for a face cloth, you could use it for cleaning, you could color coordinate different colors for different rooms of your house, and you can make it in any size. I'm making them with 100% cotton because they're easy to throw in the washing machine and they're absorbent. They're also eco-friendly because they can be thrown in the compost when they come to an end. You can also make them with acrylic yarn. I find they don't work as well, but acrylic yarn is really good if you want to make it as a duster. It does pick the dust up much better than a cotton one. So this is what we're going to do today. What you'll need to make the washcloth is some 8-ply cotton. This is the Lincraft cotton. It comes in a 50-gram ball. This is the 4-season Flinders cotton from Spotlight, also in a 50-gram ball. Both of them are 8-ply cotton. Lots of colour ranges in both. The Flinders does have a much larger colour range. The Lincraft is maybe a very, very slightly thicker cotton, but both work really well for washcloths. You will get a full cloth out of one ball with some left over. You'll also need a 4mm crochet hook, a needle for sewing in the ends, 4 stitch markers and a pair of scissors. To start with, we need to do an uneven number of chain stitches. So you need to leave some of a tail, make a slip knot which creates a loop, pop your hook in and pull it, not too tight. Most crochet starts with chain stitch and this one does too, and the number I'm going to do for this is 29 chain. So we start doing chain by putting the yarn over, pulling through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. If you want to learn the stitches, these are in a video on the Makerspace. So we've got 3, we need to do 29. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. Now your chain shouldn't be too tight. If you do it really tight, you'll find one end of your cloth is slightly narrower. So it just wants to have a little bit of a give in it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start off, the first stitch we're going to do is a single crochet. We're not going to do it into this first chain stitch here. We're going to go into the second chain stitch. So we miss this loop here and we go into the second chain stitch and we do a single crochet, which is insert your hook, put the yarn over, pull through a loop, yarn over and pull through 2. Now this pattern alternates with 2 different stitches all the way through. So it's going to alternate between a single crochet and a double crochet. Now I'm using American terms. If you're using UK terms, you will be doing a double crochet and a treble crochet. But for the use of today, we're going to use American terms. So we've done a single crochet in the first stitch, and in this next stitch here, we're going to do a double crochet. So to do a double, you put the yarn over, you insert the hook into your loop and pull through a loop, you put the yarn over, you pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. If you want to learn these stitches, you're not sure how, you can refer to the videos that we've already got up on the Makerspace. So then we're going to alternate those 2 stitches all the way along. So we're going to do a single crochet into the next stitch, and then we're going to do a double crochet into the next stitch, which you put your yarn over for, into that stitch there, and you taller stitch. The next stitch we're going to do a single crochet, and the next stitch is a double crochet, and the next stitch is a single crochet. Sometimes the first row is a little bit tricky to get the loop, so we do a single crochet and the next stitch is a double crochet. So work your way along to the end doing single crochet, double crochet, single crochet, double crochet, and I'll come back when we get to the last 2 stitches. So we've come to the last 2 stitches of the first row. So this was a double crochet, so we're going to do a single crochet in the next stitch, and the very last stitch we're going to double crochet. Now this is the first one I said, don't pull too tight the loop on your hook. If you pull it too tight, it can be a bit tricky getting into this stitch. If you find it has pulled a bit tight like this has, this was your slip knot, so you can loosen it a little bit just by putting a needle in or something. I've loosened it a little bit too much there. And you can see this is the loop we need to go into for the last double crochet. Then you can always just tighten that up a little bit at the end. So that's our first row. So there's 28 stitches, and we start with a single crochet and end with a double crochet. As you can see, it's a little bit bumpy and wavy, and that's quite normal. That's because you've done 2 different stitches of different heights in the same row. So it's not going to be nice and even as it would if you'd done all the same stitch. So for the second row, we do 1 chain stitch, and then we turn our work. And as I said before, we start with a single crochet and we end with a double crochet. So into this stitch, we're going to do a single crochet. Now the last stitch we did was a double. So with this pattern, you will always do a single crochet into the previous double crochet and a double crochet into a previous single crochet. So we do a single crochet into the first stitch, and this was a single crochet, and we're going to do a double crochet into that one. And it's easy to tell the difference between the stitches because the double crochet is a lot bulkier. If you look, there's the V on top, and this is the stitch. So because we put the yarn around the needle before we started, it's created a bigger, thicker stitch. So the bulkier stitch is the double crochet. The single crochet, basically all it is 2 loops on the top of the hook, and it's almost a space that you go into. So we've done a single crochet and a double crochet. So into the top of the double crochet we do a single, and top of the single we do a double. All you've got to remember really is to do a single then a double, and you can see from these 2 which are which stitch. So if you look back and say, what did I just do? Someone's spoken to you and you've lost track. You can look at the stitches, and if you're not sure, you can sort of pull it out like this and then pull it out again. Well, that was the yarn wrapped around. If you pull this one back, you can see it's a much shorter stitch. So that was your single crochet. And I still pull them out sometimes because I can't remember what stitch I did. So we do a single crochet and a double crochet and a single crochet and a double crochet and a single and a double. And we work this all the way across the row. As you can see, the pattern's starting to get some texture now, and it's a similar texture on the back. When you've done a few more rows, you will see that it's completely reversible, this stitch. So it's a great stitch for doing things like a scarf where you don't really want a back and a front. Blankets, it's a lovely stitch for doing blankets. It's nice if you do that in a bulkier yarn for a nice thick blanket. And you can just do different rows of colour or different chunks of colour. Makes a really nice modern blanket. This can be done in any size, as I said before. So if you want to do a washcloth for a face cloth for a child who maybe can't handle something quite as big as this, you can do any size you want as long as you do an odd number of stitches. So you might do a 15, 17, 19 chain stitch to start with for a little person. It's also a great one to do for elderly people who might not be able to handle a larger face cloth. I know I've made some for my mum and she said they were much easier being smaller. So now we're to the last 2 stitches of row 2, and if you just tilt your work towards you, you'll quite clearly see you've got 2 V's left. So we do a single crochet into this one, and then our last stitch will be a double crochet. Now we are going to put a border on this, so don't worry too much about the edges, but you do need to to make sure you have, just pull that last stitch out, you do need to make sure that you have 28 stitches, otherwise you won't end up with a square. So that's 2 rows of our washcloth. Now for this, to make it a square, it works out, sometimes with stitches being different heights, 28 stitches wouldn't equal 28 rows, but in this case it does. So what we need to do is we need to continue along with this until we've done 28 rows. Now what I do is I always write down in a notebook things that I'm making. When I come back to make some more of these in 6 months time, I probably won't remember the stitch I used, the hook I used, or the yarn I used, and I certainly won't remember how many chain stitch I put on to get the size that I wanted. So in my notebook, as I'm making different things, I just jotted down some notes. So I put things like what I've made, washcloth, and I've used a 4mm hook with the suzette stitch, and I used Flinders cotton, and that I did 29 chain, which will equal 28 stitches. And then I write down the rows. Now, I'm not great at counting rows, especially with a textured stitch like this. It's quite hard to sort of work out there that you've done 2 rows. With a same stitch, if I was doing all single crochet or all double crochet, that's quite easy to count the rows. One little tip, when you're looking at the rows on your work, your tail end will always be the opposite side to your working yarn when you're on an even row. You've done a row of chain stitch, which doesn't count as a row. So your starting point is actually on this side. So we did 1 row going this way and row 2 coming back. So your working yarn is on this side and your tail end is on that side. So we know that we've done an even number of rows, and we've done 2. So continue on until we've done 28, until you've done 28 rows, and then I'll show you how to do the border. So now we've finished the 28 rows, and our washcloth is pretty much a square. It does look a little bit of an odd shape because it hasn't been blocked or anything. Blocking is when you have a piece of crochet, you dampen it and you pin it out and you let it dry. So if we were to block this and we pinned it out, we would get a perfect square. But instead we're going to put a border on. If you fold it diagonally, you'll find that it's pretty much is a square. And once the border's on it, it will appear to be more of a square. In a pattern, you will find that it'll say pick up 28 stitches along each side. Picking 28 stitches up along the bottom is easy because you have a loop left from your chain, and picking stitches up along the top is easy because you can go into the V from the last row. It's going down the sides that is harder. Now you'll find your own way of doing this. I'm going to show you the way I do it. It's something that I've worked out over the years of making these, and it just works for me. Normally with crochet stitches, if you have a piece of work where you've done all double crochet, if you have a double crochet stitch, you would do 2 single crochet into that stitch. So if this whole item was double crochet, down the side you would put 2 single crochets into each one of these stitches because it's a tall stitch. And in a single crochet you would always put 1 because it's a shorter, it's not as high. In this instance, we're going to treat them all as if they were single crochet and just put 1 in. So we need approximately 28. Now you'll see here, this is the single crochet, this is a single crochet, and this is the double crochet. Now what you can see is that there are 2 loops, 2 spaces for the double crochet and 1 space for the single. We only need to go into one of these spaces. If we go into both, we'll have an extra 14 stitches, and we don't want that, and then it will all ripple and it won't sit flat. So into each single crochet stitch we're going to put 1 single crochet, and into one of these spaces we will put a single crochet. So to start with, we do 1 chain. Now each corner needs 3 single crochets in it so that it doesn't curl. If we only put 1 in, your item, there won't be enough stitches to go around the corner. So into this first space here, the very first space under the stitch, we're going to put 3 single crochet. So we put 1, 2, 3, and that's our corner. It will be our corner. Now, because we're doing 2 rounds, we will do another round on top of this. So if you put a stitch marker in the middle stitch, that will help you when you come back round to identify which is the actual corner stitch. Because when you've got a whole load of and you're going around a corner, it's not always clear which is the corner stitch. And I still do this because I can never work it out either. So that's our corner. This stitch, next stitch here, is the single crochet. So we're going to put a single crochet into that stitch. Now you'll see here you've got a long stitch, and this was the double crochet, and there's a piece of cotton going between. You need to pick one of these loops. It doesn't matter which one, but make it the same all the way along. So I've just always done the second loop, space rather. So don't put a stitch in that one, put it in this one, and then put one in the single crochet. So you miss a space, and then you single crochet for 2 spaces. You miss a space, and then you single crochet for the next 2 spaces. I hope that's clear. So I'm going to miss this space here, and I'm going to put a single crochet into this space and the next one. And I'm going to miss this space, and I'm going to put a single crochet into this space and the next one. Miss that space, single crochet into the next one and the next one. Don't do this too tightly. If you do it very tight, it won't lay flat. Just do it at a fairly loose tension. If you're a very tight crocheter, some people will go up half a hook size for the border, just so as you don't have it too tight. Miss that space, single crochet into the next 2 spaces. Miss a space, single crochet into the next 2. Miss a space, single crochet into the next 2. Miss, single crochet into the next 2. Miss a space, single crochet into the next 2, miss, and then single crochet into the next 2. With cotton yarn, you have to be careful it doesn't split. That's what it nearly did there. If you have a look at the cotton and you just untwist it, you see how you'll see all the strands. Now each of these strands is 2 ply, and we have, no, it's not, there's 5 strands, I beg your pardon, it's not 2 ply. So you've got 5 strands there. And sometimes what you can do is, when you're doing your stitch, you might miss a strand, so you might only pick up 3 or 4 of them, and then you're left with a loose loop. So just be very careful of that. So I'm going to miss that space into the next one, and into the next one, miss a space, into the next 2, miss a space, into the next one, and then I've come to the corner. So into this space I'm going to put 3 single crochets. Now it might create a little bit of a hole, and that can't be helped, and that's your next corner. So we're going to, I can't pick these up, we're going to, out of those 3 stitches, we're going to pop a stitch marker into that middle stitch, and that's our first side. That's one of the hard bits done. So see how that lays nice and flat? Now we will just count how many stitches. That's our corner. So let's see how many stitches we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26. And then those are our corner ones. so that's fine, and it lays nice and flat. Then we're going to go along what was the start of the project, which is picking up the loops from the chain. So we've done the corner. Now if you turn your work towards you a little bit, you will see quite clearly that there's a loop there. This row's an easy row, so you can just pick up that loop and work into, you have to turn it right over because it's sort of on the other side. Just put your hook in to the loop and pick it up. I'll just show you here. See all these loops going along here? So this is the loop that you're going under to put in your single crochet for your border. So that's the loop that was left from your chain. So we just put a single crochet all the way along. So now we're at the end of that row of the border we were doing, and we've come to the last stitch. So you can put your last stitch in here, but it's only one strand and it may pull a little bit. So what I tend to do is I just go into the stitch there, into the middle of that first chain. So I've got a couple of loops on my hook, and I put 3 single crochet into that space there. And again, we put a stitch marker on so we know where the middle of that is. Now we're going to go up the other side. Now it's going to be very similar to the first edge that we did, where we have to pick up the ends of the rows. So if we have a look, this was a double crochet, this is a single. It does look a bit different because you're going the opposite way, but there's still 2 loops there and a single crochet. So what you need to do is where the spaces are, you pick up 2 and miss 1. So we're going to miss that one there, pick up 2, and we're going to miss that one, pick up 2 and miss a space, pick up 2 and miss 1, pick up 2 and miss 1. It's different going up the other side. It's not quite the same. You'd think it would reverse, but it doesn't. But as long as you get approximately 26-27 stitches, but it's the same process. Go into 2 spaces and miss a space. And it's just a matter of looking to see where the spaces are. This one tends to be sort of just one strand where the single crochet is, but that's probably because we're on the opposite side. I don't really know. Can't explain that one. So then we're almost at the end, and we'll go back and count and see if we've picked up about the same number of stitches. Now this one is the corner again, so we're just going to go into a space where we've got a couple of strands, and it's actually the top of the stitch we're going to go into here, and we're going to put 3 single crochet into there, and that's our last corner, and we're going to put the stitch marker into the the middle of those 3 there. You see how I've split the yarn there? It doesn't really matter for the stitch marker, but it just shows how the yarn can split. So I'll put it under the stitch. So we're going to have a look Now that looks fairly flat. One of the sides does create like a little bit of a hole. Looks like there's little holes, but it's nothing we can do about that. So we're going to count 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 27. So there is one extra stitch there, but that's really not going to be able to tell. And then the easiest side to do is to crochet a single crochet along the top, which is the last row we did. So that's quite an easy one to do. We can just go along and single crochet into the top of every stitch, and that also gives us a nice smooth edge when we've single crocheted around. Okay, so we're going to go into the last stitch here, and then to finish off the round we're going to put a slip stitch into the very first single crochet we did. So this is the second one, which was the middle one of the three. So we're going to put a slip stitch into the first single crochet. To do a slip stitch, you put your hook through the loops, yarn over, pull through and pull through, and that just does a slip stitch to close it. So now you'll see it's fairly even, fairly square, without any blocking. We're going to do a second round. The second round easy because we've already got the stitches there, so we just go around and single crochet into each stitch, but don't forget we're putting 3 stitches into each of these corners. When we've done the 3 stitches, single crochet into the corner, you don't need to put a stitch marker in again because that's the last round, so we don't need to know where the middle stitch is. So we'll go ahead and do the second round. So to start off with, we do 1 chain stitch, and then we actually do a single crochet into that first single crochet as well. So right on next to the chain we put 1 single crochet into there. So this is our corner stitch. So you can take the stitch marker out, and we put 3 single crochet into that corner stitch, and then we single crochet all the way along here until we come to the next stitch marker where we put 3. Then work your way all along the next row, the next side, until you come to the next stitch marker, and all the way around till you come back to where we've just started. And I'll show you how to finish off. So we've just about finished the border. There's just 1 more stitch to do. So we're going to put a single crochet in there, and I'm going to show you how to finish. Normally the traditional way to finish is to do a slip stitch into your first stitch of the round, pull through and pull through, and then cut your yarn. What I'm going to do is show you a different way to finish, and it's with an invisible join. So we don't do that last slip stitch. We finish off the last stitch of the round, which was that single crochet, and then we pull the yarn through like that. So as you can see, it's not finished off. There's a gap there where we're missing, it looks like we're missing a stitch. So what we do now is you take your sewing up needle and you thread that, and we're going to create our last stitch. So what we're going to do is, with your work facing you from front to back, you're going to go through those top 2 loops of the first stitch of the round with your needle and take your yarn through, and then through the center of the last single crochet we did of the round, you're going to put your needle through the center of the stitch through to the back, and that effectively has created another V. You can see there you've got another V. So if you just pull that a little bit tighter, you can't really see which one it was, and then that's invisible. So when you're looking all around the edges, you can't actually see which one was the last stitch. And then we just need to secure that on the back. So to do this, you need to go through a couple of loops. Be careful how you pull this through, because if you just pull it really tight, you'll pull your invisible stitch really tight. So just make it the same size as the other stitches, and then just double through like that to catch it so that it's not going to get pulled. Just pop through another one. It's sort of a bit like putting a knot in it there. Doesn't matter if you go through the yarn, it's just so it's secure, so that's not going to come undone. And then just weave your end under a couple of stitches and back through, and then you can snip your yarn off very close because you know that's not going to come undone. And then you can't see where the join was. Not sure which stitch it was. Now the only other end that you have to do is the starting end, and this is pretty secure anyway because that was your first chain. It had a knot in it, you've crocheted over it, so this one just needs to be sewn in a similar way to the other one. Just weave it underneath a few stitches backwards and forwards. Take it under there. We'll go back. And that will be absolutely secure. And we just snip that end off. And then we have our finished washcloth. So we haven't blocked it, so if you blocked it, it would be perfectly square, but you're going to be washing with it, so it doesn't need blocking. And this can just get thrown in the washing machine. 100% cotton. If you're using dark colours, rich colours like this tangerine, I've never had any problem with the colour running first time I've washed it, but probably don't put it in with your whites. Okay, thanks for watching.